In today's episode, I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Mark Bennett. With over 3 decades of experience working with and supporting global corporate businesses, business leaders, managers, elite sport teams, national sports organizations, and universities around the world, Mark has become a well-respected and highly regarded performance architect and a pioneer of his need-centered approach to people and team performance. And in today's episode, what we do is we talk about Mark's performance development systems. And we do a brief introduction and overview of some of his ideas and concepts. And in this conversation, we talk about his ideas around performance is a behavior, not an outcome. We have a great discussion about how we as coaches can help our athletes make better decisions and how they can commit to those decisions without fear. We discuss the importance of establishing what success means to us and having a success criteria. And within that criteria, we talk about the behaviors, and we talk about his ideas around UAEs, where he talks about unacceptable behaviors, acceptable behaviors, and exceptional behaviors. We also introduce Mark's concepts around the rule of 3 and how we can hold each other accountable within our organization. Now listen, this is one of my favorite conversations I've had so far. I know you're going to have so many great takeaways, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Mark Bennett. Mark Bennett, welcome to the Being Champions podcast.
Thanks for inviting me, Matt.
Man, Mark, I got up this morning. I was so excited because I knew I had the chance to learn from you today. And Mark, just thinking about 2 years ago, I came across your work. I was listening to, I think it was the Coaching Ed podcast, and I was immediately drawn. You had this expression where you said, performance is a behavior, not an outcome. So I was so intrigued by that in learning about your system. And I know you've been working on your system for over 30 years. So I was wondering if you could talk to our listeners real quick about your performance development system in this whole need-centered approach. How has that evolved over the past 30 years with you going from British forces to working with elite sport? Can you kind of introduce to us your PDS?
Give me a time frame, Matt, to ensure.
I know, like this is gonna be, let's go real quick, but we'll talk for about 45, 50 minutes, but I know we could spend hours on this one. But
so on the intro, give me a time, 5 minutes, 3 minutes.
Let's go about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. So yeah, it started, I joined the military in the early 80s thinking everyone would be fit and motivated in the British military, and they weren't, and many were unfit, demotivated. Yeah. So I got in and lost my way a little bit, but I always had this sort of solution find in mind, which wasn't helpful at school when you asked the why question, and definitely wasn't in the military when you were at basic level, when they just said, stand here, do this. So I then met a commando guy, Budgie Burgess was his name, still in contact with him now, and he took me under his wing. And he saw me for me, and he started to say, look, just go for things, start believing in things. And I then went and did the commando course, passed that, ended up being a physical training instructor, served operations around the first Gulf conflict, and then got promoted into recruit training, where I was the commando trained physical training instructor. And when I first started, you had a few platoons, and each platoon had their own physical training instructor that you trained them for 10 weeks, pretty much did what you wanted in those times. Then you had the competitions at the end, and my platoons used to win every competition. So I thought I was really great at what I did. And then about 18 months in, on one of the pass-off parades, one of the parents came up to me and says, oh, my son doesn't stop talking about it. You've really changed his life. And this was early 90s. And it hit me like a brick in a negative way. Because the first time I'd actually looked at the number that had passed out that hadn't gone back to civilian life. And although I was winning all the log race, endurance tests, etc., my platoon was smaller than the others. Yeah. And it was it made me think, actually, am I any good at what I do? Because I went from a 10 out of 10, I'm awesome. And then I'm thinking I'm a 2 out of 10. Because all I'm doing is if people are keeping up with me, yes, I'm building some sort of mental resilience, but if people are keeping up with me, they pass. But the amount of people that are fading away and giving up, that's not good enough. So
Right.
I decided then I either need to change my job or change how I did my job. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, Matt, there's no internet then. There was no one to turn to go, is there another way? I just knew the way I was doing it wasn't good enough. So I went on this discovery, just see, could I engage more people? Could I, without dropping the standard, could I get more people passing in engagement, in mental resilience, in all those elements of, in no moment when things aren't going well.
Yeah.
So I started to lose a couple of competitions. So you can imagine everyone around me saying, Mark, you're getting soft. But I knew I couldn't go back because I knew it was wrong. So it took me a while and I started to win all the competitions again.
Yeah.
And I had far more passing in. So I knew what I was doing was right, but I couldn't explain it. So I cultivated it then. I thought I'm onto something here. And then the next negative light bulb came about 9 years later. So I'd been working with elite pro sports on my holidays, weekends. I got promoted into a senior position then in the military, running for the military and pre-commando training, running the commando training wing, etc. And on one of the professional teams I worked with on one of my holidays, they developed great when they were with me. But then when they went away, I had the athletes getting in touch with me saying, Mark, it's all gone back to how it was. So
Yeah.
when I went up and watched, I could see they'd regressed in their behaviors and the coaches had regressed in their behaviors as well. So then I realized this is no good unless I can develop the influencers in a way that they can do it when I'm not there. They can continue the culture, the decision making, the cultivation of the behaviors and performance. So it took me about another 6 years, and then I started to get success. So long story short, it's been about 30 sports now, from Olympic, Paralympic, and global businesses, grassroots clubs, colleges in America, NBA, Major League Baseball, England rugby, Premiership rugby, football, massive expansion of sports. So the performance development systems as it is now has got two elements really. The first element, which we don't really discuss that often, but it's really important, is the holistic system of embedding change in a culture. So how can I identify the need of a business or a sports team or a club, the people of influence, how we can make sure that they are developing their own behaviors in the right way. So it's synergized. It's not like an athlete goes from one coach to another and all of a sudden things are different. How do we embed that synergy, but also then what I call the adherence element? So often, I'm sure you've experienced before, Matt, and listeners have, you'll go on a training course or you'll listen to something and you'll watch a YouTube and you go, oh, that was really great. But 2 weeks later, you've forgotten about it. And really, your behaviors haven't changed. Indeed, the athlete's behaviors haven't changed. So I spent a lot of time, now part of the system is to embed a support strategy of anybody I work with. So the support can be there ongoing. So it embeds the behaviors that we want in ourselves, managers, coaches, and also embed the culture and behaviors in the athletes. So it becomes second nature. So under pressure, that's your go-to. And that is not easy to do. And I'd say that's where most consultants and most coaching courses fall down, because human beings need support of change. So that's one element. The second element that no doubt we'll get into, Matt, is the need-centered coaching approach. So the easiest way to explain this is traditionally, and I'm generalizing here, but traditionally most coaching is based on hardware. So when I talk about hardware, the physical attributes of somebody, the technical ability of somebody, the tactical ability of a team to do certain moves, defense, midfield, attack, whatever sport it may be. The key bit that's missing on most training courses is what I call the software. So the software is being aware of your state, managing your state, being able to scan and collate the right data in any given moment, being able to identify options of intervention of choices, being able to make good judgment on the influences of that choice in that moment, being able to commit to the choice, being able to share and communicate effectively with others that adaptation live, being able to receive feedback from someone and act on it, whether it's a peer or anyone else, and then being able to, once you've committed without fear, being able to review the choice and the execution live without the need for the coach. Right. But also using that software to get a coach to, how am I managing my state? How am I connected to what success is? How am I looking for, where's the source of an issue? Okay, so what interventions have I got now that I can put in, and how can I put them in to actually solve the issue without taking over? How can I keep the athletes engaged, get them to make the decisions, but know the light and shade of those interventions? So that need-centered approach is the easiest way to explain it, Matt, is in traditional. And when I say traditional, I'm not saying everyone does this. It's just the generalization is often a coach will have a session plan and they'll say success for this session is this. And they'll have a nice list of what they want to cover technically and tactically, whatever it may be. And a lot of coaches, if they don't cover that, they see that session as a failure. So in a session, often they think, right, I'm not seeing what I want to here. So let me give the athletes the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I'm seeing success. So now the session was successful. So the need-centered approach is saying, hang on a minute, what is success? If success for me is in a match, the athletes can apply these things without me shouting and telling them what to do. Okay, so if that's my success and I'm connected to that, which I call the lighthouse, a point of reference, in this session now, I'm seeing they're not doing the right thing or making the right choice. So now a need-centered approach may be, I'm not going to tell them the answer now. It would be easy. It would look good now, but I need them to be able to figure it out. So what interventions can I put in to get them to understand what they're doing is not effective, understand what another option is, being able to commit to that other option without thinking you're going to get outcome straight away, and me knowing how to manipulate that environment and allow them to be successful, which may take 2-3 weeks or 2-3 sessions. There's no lie to it. So I think this is the biggest shift from my work I do across all levels of coaching and management is understanding most coaches have enough technical and tactical knowledge. In fact, more than they need.
Yeah.
Where a lot of coaches struggle is to connect with every athlete, to engage every athlete, to get every athlete to actually understand their role and being able to have a voice within the group of peers, but also with the coach so they can understand, okay, something struggling here. Okay, what interventions have I got to have an impact within that athlete or group of athletes without taking over? So that's the short version, Matt. I don't know if you want to delve into anything there.
Man, Mark, there's so many things I want to unpack. Again, I'm sitting here just like taking notes, but thinking about some of these things you were talking about. And this is where I think, I'm at the high school level, and I think we know as coaches, like we know what we want to do, right? We just don't know the how part. Sometimes we struggle with that how part. And there's a great line from James Clear's book Atomic Habits that I always think about when I think about your work, where he says we don't rise to our level of our goals, we fall to the levels of our systems, right? And I think where we need help as coaches is establishing that system, like you said. And we're so worried about the technical and the tactical, and we're chasing after scoreboards. We just don't know how to do it. And what you talk about, Mark, is really giving ownership to our athletes, right? And helping them with behaviors and helping them with decision-making process. So with that, Mark, how do we as coaches allow ourselves to step back and give more ownership and to help change behaviors where you say, performance is a behavior, not an outcome? How do we allow our athletes to do that? How do they make better decisions without having fear and stuff like that? Can you talk about those two things as far as behaviors and how we can create better decision making?
So this is now a 50-hour podcast, Matt, to answer
I know. Let's roll here.
So
we got to tell the listeners to strap in.
Let's begin the start point. So the first thing I'm coming from a British Commando Forces background. I'm not a soft individual. I'm 60 next year. I still outwork most people in the gym 6 days a week.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will listen to this and they'll think, oh, this is soft. I can't just stand back and give athletes ownership. And they're correct. We don't give athletes ownership. We develop and cultivate athletes so they can own things.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is the different line. Now, that is far tougher than a coach shouting the answer on the sideline and an athlete looking over, where do you want me to go now, coach? That is tougher. So if you think actually me standing and just, it's all about ownership and you think that's soft, what's soft is you just shouting and the athletes just move where you want. One, it's reactive coaching. You're never going to develop athletes under pressure. That's why British Special Forces, US Special Forces don't tell athletes what to do and where to go. They don't tell the soldiers. They develop their soldiers, one, mental resilience, but secondly, situations so they can understand judgment in the moment at self and with peers. Well, they practice that. So when we talk about cultivating ownership within our athletes and being able to step back, it's the light of shade. This is the coaching craft. Is understanding nothing should be, I call it invisible expectations. So let me share with you some of the trip ups, Matt. Then maybe we can go from there. So,
Okay, yeah, definitely.
invisible expectations is one of the trip ups from a lot of coaches. So, what I mean by that is a coach will have an expectation of what that should look like, whether an individual or team, and they'll keep it in their heads.
Yeah.
Now, every other athlete has got their own expectation of what it is, and it's not shared, it's not cleared. Now, a lot of times, the expectation of the coach will be around outcome and be around, I saw this once from my athletes, so my expectation is I'm expecting that every time. I've seen it once. This is the best they can do, so this is my expectation. So what you're doing there is, one is it's invisible, so it's not shared. So now there's confusion. So now you may now getting annoyed with somebody and they're thinking, well, I thought I'm all right. And you'll go, no, that's not good enough. And you go, well, I think it's good enough because we haven't pre-agreed it. So, but also if we're focused on outcome, we're not in control of outcome if another opposition team, for an example, or weather conditions, or, just where we are in fatigue or how our brain is, or the combination on the pitch or the court with us is different than it was 2 days ago. There's so many variables. We're setting up failure if we're focused on expectation is outcome. So this is back to that performance as a behavior, not an outcome.
Yeah.
Behaviors we can manage. Behaviors we can measure. Behaviors we can develop. When we talk about behaviors, we're talking about the judgment of each individual, how they interact together, and their commitment to the choices they make, and all those parameters around that. So now when we're talking about performance as a behavior, if we took a basketball team, for an example, Matt,
yep,
I can look at a match with a team, and post-match, we can look at that video and we can identify the choices and the execution around every single moment, every minute of that match. And from there, we'll spot the source of issues, which is very different. I'm just comparing this as traditional, as somebody saying they didn't score there or that got intercepted there, so therefore we need to work on that tactic a little bit more. But what they're not looking is go, hang on a minute, where was the source of that? Now, source may have been off-ball scanning with that athlete, didn't recognize and so move into the space, or wasn't scanning on ball effectively early enough. So now what they're saying is it didn't come off, but it didn't come off because they didn't see the option. So the issue is a scanning issue. So why keep repping the tactical when actually, no, the issue's scanning. Okay, how can we improve in the scanning? And this is where coaches don't have many options of how do I improve scanning apart from just talking about it and a timeout. That's not developing. So that element of invisible expectations, and then eliminating the gray is the second one, was a trip up. So what I mean by that is, before we start a session, we should be sharing with our athletes, apart from a few which we may get into, is what success is for the session.
Yes.
Set clear expectations around what the behaviors are, not just in pre-season, but what will be unacceptable, acceptable, and exceptional within either a technical movement, a tactical, based on our present capability, not pie in the sky, but also around our behaviors. So importantly, the athletes are involved in that. But when we pre-agree them, we make sure people understand we're not just doing this at the beginning of pre-season, which often happens. What we're saying is these are every time. This is when we're having a bad day. This is when we don't feel like it. This is when it's wet and it's cold. This is when we're mid-season. So what we're agreeing now is something we're going to commit to every time that we're capable of committing to. So let's agree, once we agree that now, it might come down a bit when we go reality, is let's agree the permissions and the what ifs. Permissions means if you see it unacceptable, who can say what? And if you hear that, what are you going to do based on the what ifs? But also when we see exceptional, better than we've ever done before, what are we going to do then? Well, we need to make sure we put a name on it and celebrate it, because we need to recognize those things. And then importantly, now we're saying, okay, as a coach, I'm going to keep notes on that. So as soon as we start the sessions, I'm scanning for that first. I'm scanning behaviors first. When I'm not seeing it based on what we've now pre-agreed, I now are looking for, right, what can I do now? Is it I reset the warm-up straight away, reset warm-up, communication or commitment? Or do I say, right, I've got influencers in the team, might be an injured player, might be my leaders, could be anybody, but I'm now pulling them over and go, what are you seeing here, Sarah? What are you seeing here, Jimmy? Unacceptable, coach. Okay, so what are you going to do about that? Do you want to call a timeout on you, 20 seconds, and share that with a group? Yeah, do that, coach. Okay, 20 seconds on Sarah. And now Sarah speaks about it
Right.
quickly, not 10 minutes, not 5 minute chat from coach. This is bang, 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 we go again. So
Yeah.
now what we're saying is, if we can identify what the behaviors are that we need to see in order to be successful every time that we're capable of, let's put in a level of energy and scanning and commitment to bring them alive, and understand that may take 6 months to embed to be habit. It's not
Right.
a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So you can see now we talk about software. There's those two mistakes of the invisible expectations and the eliminating the gray are where often things fall down. And then if we're not literally scanning for them every time and then getting the athletes to start scanning for them every time, they will fall down. They will
Yeah.
not be successful. And give it 6 months. Don't wait a couple of weeks.
Right. And Mark, what I love when you're talking about this, what I hear a lot is what we're doing is trying to establish some common language, right? And I was telling you before we hit record, at our school, we're a pre-K to 12. So we have middle school coaches, we have varsity coaches, we have outside coaches. So a lot of times our kids are hearing the same thing, but 30 different ways, right? So the
Yeah.
importance of establishing this common language. And I know with that, what we were talking about before we hit record was actually defining what success means to us and using this success criteria, which I've actually used a few times since I was introduced to your work. But can you talk about that? How do we define what a success criteria is, and how can we establish this common language across the board? So we are establishing what you call the UAEs, and then talking about the rule of three for accountability. So can we shift into success criteria?
Yeah, so there's two elements to that. Is one is the big philosophy picture is, as a coach, what for you is a successful coach, an effective
Yeah.
coach? And we need
Yeah.
to ask everybody that, but make sure we're aligned. Because if you're not aligned, you may be not right for the organization.
Right.
You'll be just banging against the wall and not
Yeah.
enjoying
Yeah.
yourself. So sometimes we need to go deeper than just the normal, well, I want to engage my athletes, I want to perform well. No, no, no.
Right.
Let's look at what would really be success. Now, for me, if someone asked me what's a successful coach is, my aim should be to make myself redundant, to develop my athletes so they can manage their own state, make great decisions live as a combination, commit, review, live, execution, choice without the need for the coach.
Yeah.
So that is my success criteria. Now, does that mean I stand and don't do anything and don't turn up for training? Absolutely not. But what it means is, every time I'm in that session, I'm thinking, I want you to be able to do this without the need for me. So what can I do now to shift that line on that process? Now that will change my behaviors as a coach. But if a coach is saying, well, success for me is I'm like the chess master, and in a match I'll stand and I've just got to beat the other coach. So I'll tell you what to do. I'll draw great pictures. Well, if that's your aim as a coach, the athletes will never develop at the way they can, and you'll be reactive. Because if we look at basketball again as an example, even halftime for any sports, is when you come in and you start drawing things on a board, well, guess who else is doing that? The opposition.
Yeah, the other coach.
So
Yeah.
that could be out of date within 5 seconds of going back out onto the pitch or the court. And all of a sudden now the athlete's going, no, that's not working. What do you want me to do now, coach? Now the coach is shouting some other information. So it's not fit for purpose. So what is a successful coach has to be agreed. Now, once we've done that and we align, then the next thing is just, if we just break down a session. So a simple session should be, I'm going in and I'm recognizing I have a idea of where the athletes are as a team.
Yeah.
Here's the challenge though. Unless you're a professional team, the chances are you're going to have mixed capability, quite diverse in one group. You're going to have some people that weren't there last session. So now when I'm just coming in, I may have planned a session, but what I've got to do, I've got to plan sessions in combination. So I've got to be looking, okay, last 2-3 sessions, where do we work on? And on a session plan, we should be having software and hardware. So what are we working on software? Where do we get to? Communication may be an example. So what is effective communication? It should be effective communication is only effective if it has a desired impact. Right. So now I'm looking at communication differently. So if I pick that up as our software focus, that should be on my session plan. Yeah. We've been working on that. We got to this level without me intervening as a coach in the last couple of sessions. So I'm going to scan for that. Hardware, what did we work on? Okay, we're here now. This is where we got to. Okay, I'm going to scan for that. So we may say now, I will go straight into a warm-up. and we will just go into 3-4 minutes of playing a game. So they know, guys, you're going to go into a game straight away now, or a game situation. Could be half pitch, half court, doesn't matter, for a few minutes. So now the warm-up's changed. So now they're thinking, oh, I'm not going to stand around listening to coach after the warm-up now. I've got to get ready. And
Yeah.
now you do is you just scan, and what you're scanning for is behaviors, warm up first, and in that first few minutes. And how is the recall from the previous sessions in technical and tactical?
Right.
But importantly, with the combination I have now that may be different than it was last session, is where are they in reality? So now I'm scanning. Oh, this is a reality I'm working with now. If the behaviors aren't good enough, interventions in behaviors. So now the behaviors are acceptable. Now I'm seeing capability reality, because if the behaviors are unacceptable, they're not committing. I'm not seeing capability. I'm seeing lazy people. So why do anything in the hardware? Let's intervention software. Now I'm seeing it. Okay, this is reality. So now good coaching should be, yes, I'd planned this, but what I'm seeing now is the source is here. We're not ready to move on yet. So you bring everyone in, you say, okay, once we've cultivated them to review themselves, it may be all right. Here's some little whiteboards, a little A3 ones and a pen, right? You got 2 minutes in your micro groups, review the last few minutes. How successful were we? What are you thinking? And they can write down. Now, if they're missing then what we do in the last few sessions, you can look at that, and you could do this around one board initially. And now we're looking at saying, I'm seeing on the board loads of 10, 15 tactical things, and you're thinking, no, that's what you used to do before. And you just say, okay, what did we work on, software and hardware, for the last few weeks? Review that now. Software on the board, hardware. And now you're getting them to focus on what they did in the past. Okay, review that. How are we now? Now, if they're picking up, fine on this, unacceptable here, now we can go, great, I agree. So what do we need to do here? We've shown we can do it. So what's preventing us from being successful? So it may be then we go, well, let's just go out again for a few minutes. We can do this, coach. Great. Show me. But let's agree. Remind me what we said unacceptable was acceptable and exceptional. So now there's a dialogue, but it's short. Or we may say, oh, we're not ready yet, coach, because a few of us are away last session or last few weeks. This play or this principle, not all of us understand it, or we're a bit of a mixed group. So, okay, well, let's have that as our success. But now that they've bought into the success because it's reality. So now let's put, if we haven't pre-agreed already, let's agree if that's success, what would be success now for this next 30, 40 minutes or hour, whatever it is. Let's agree that. Now let's agree what would be unacceptable, acceptable, and exceptional based on where we are of us committing to this. So now they're involved in that success criteria. Then you put in your interventions, whatever you want to do. But every time they come in, you've wrote this on a board. When they come in, you say, okay, look at the board, review how we doing based on what we said success was. So you're preventing them talking about everything again. If you get the same one or two people talking, you take them aside and say, I love what you're talking there. Can you help me? There's a few quiet players. When they come in next time, can you ask them what they think? And can you direct them to the board for me? So instead of shutting them down, we're giving them leadership responsibility. And all of a sudden they come in again. And those now are asking others, what do you think? And they can direct them to the board. Or you might say, right, you've put it on the board. I'm going to hide the board. I'll put them in the micro groups for the reviews, a minute, 2 minutes, and come in and go, okay, what have you got? Just to see if they're linked to the board. If they're not, then spin the board around and go, review. Are we aligned to what we said? Remind me what we said. And all of a sudden again, oh, it's this. So now what we're doing is we've made clarity of purpose. We put parameters that everyone can review against in the UAE, so it's no lost interpretation. And we're honoring what we've committed to, but we've agreed what we've committed to based on the reality of the first few minutes of the session.
Yeah, and I love that, Mark. And the one word that comes to my head is intentionality, right? And being super intentional about everything we're trying to do. And a lot of times, like we'll write our practice plan and we just want to check the box. Like, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this. And what I loved that you mentioned was having that deliberate and intentional pause. Like, okay, let's take a break because the behaviors aren't matching up. A lot of times we'll try to just rush through practice because it's on the plan. We want to get this done. And keep moving forward. So I love the intentionality. And one thing, Mark, that I wanted to ask you is, I work with teenagers, And sometimes they have a hard time holding each other accountable for whatever reason. They want to be best friends, or they don't want to hurt feelings, or they just want to go with the flow. But you have this system, it's the rule of three. Can you talk to us about that rule of three and in developing a better accountability within our players?
Yeah, so the rule of three came about, I don't know how many years ago now, but it was a way to allow not just the coaches, but the athletes to give them real clarity of what they can do within peer to peer and within themselves and within
Yeah.
the relationship with the coach and the dialogue. But before I share that, I just want to add a word on when you said intentionality, Matt. The
Yep.
other word we can add to that is attention.
Yes.
So we have intentionality, but actually we're getting everyone's attention because
Yeah.
they're involved in the clarity of success. It's not coming from coach.
Right.
Coach is still in charge, but we're going, hey, are you seeing what I'm seeing now?
Yeah.
And we got a reference point. So where the rule of three comes in, and we overtly share this with everyone. We use sessions just on success for this session is bringing the rule of three alive,
Yeah.
explain the why. So for teenagers or anybody else of any age group, we've done it down to 5, 6 year olds, by the way. And
Yeah.
obviously,
I've seen the videos. I've seen the
yeah,
videos
there
of
you go.
yeah.
Is we share with them the why. So if we go, look, when we want to play and we enjoy playing, what do we need to be and how we interact with each other live? So if we're going against an opposition, what's going to make it successful for us in our interaction together? And it's always, they'll know the answers. They go, well, we need to be able to communicate, share, so we can work as a team in defense, attack, midfield, read what the opposition's doing. Great. So that's going to take not just you sharing information, but sharing it solution based,
Yeah.
not problem based. And
Yeah.
might get into that as well, but also receiving and acting on the information that you hear, even if how you hear it may not be how you like it's being said. If the actually solution base is there, that's what's going to make us successful. So where the rule of three comes in, we share with them rule of one is you at self being excellence. So let's agree what that looks like. So excellence would be doing and being the best you can with what you have in a present moment. So irrelevant of ability, capability, it's you saying with what I've got now, I can sprint there. I can scan off ball. I can make myself available. I can communicate effectively. I can accept feedback effectively at one. What can I do at one?
Right.
So when we develop that, we're saying, look, it's very difficult to be that all the time.
Yeah.
Anyone to be excellence all the time. It's a tough ask. So rule of two is your peers helping you be successful.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? And then we share with them this principle of if you're seeing someone struggle, how can you have an effective impact to help them be back into their excellence in software?
Yeah.
In hardware, in the tactical element or technical, how can you, if you see them maybe not getting the tactic right, going a bit late or a bit early, or coming in when it should be wide, whatever it may be. In a technical, it may be the hips are coming around to the side, they're not open, so that's why the person's coming around them and beating them. If you're
Yeah.
seeing that solution, you can share the solution with them. That's helping them be effective. But what I have in the rule of two is what I call the 3 A's. So the three
Yeah.
A's is if someone reaches out to you at two, a peer, if you're hearing that, so long as it's solution based, what we want to say is internally, I want to accept it. So even
Yeah.
if I hate that person or I don't know that person, or what they're saying is not in the tone I like, hey, if it's solution based, I'm internally letting it in. I'm then acknowledging it through voice or so they know I'm acknowledging it, and then I act on it. I commit to that change.
Right.
So that's that rule of two, which is where most coaches and athletes struggle. So they don't spend energy in it. So this is where I would say, once we've shared the rule of three, I may have a whole session where I say, okay, this session is us being successful at rule of two.
Yeah.
Now, remember, key point here before I share rule of three is you can never train software on your own. So when coaches say, Mark, I haven't got time to do rule of three and all this because I've got a game next week. So, well, no. Anytime you're doing hardware, technical and tactical, there's software. So when you're practicing software, you're doing it in the game. You're doing it whether it's half court, half pitch, or in play, whatever it is. So they're symbiotic. You can't do one without the other. So if your tactics are breaking down because people aren't communicating effectively, well, guess where your energy needs to be? In the software to enhance the communication. So this is where they're symbiotic. So the rule of three then is coach. So this is where there's two elements of this. Is one element, if you are struggling at two, you can't figure things out, then you can reach out to coach and say, coach, we're struggling here.
Yeah.
But you need to see if you can solution find first. Other element to three is if coach is seeing rule of two is not being effective, rule of one is not being effective, but no one's reaching out to two, coach will step in. Now, coach stepping in is there's 9 to 11 interventions here that a coach can do.
Yeah.
So it's not stopping play and taking over. It's saying, what intervention can I do now to enhance 1 and 2?
Right.
Now, there may be a stop in play. I might go, okay, we're coming up. Yeah, we're struggling. We're not seeing the solution. Okay, I'm going to stop and I'm going to put an intervention in. But often there's so many interventions we can do before stopping play, but that's rule of 3. So what we say to athletes is your aim is not to get to 3. Because if you're not getting to 3, you're being successful, because that's how we want to play in a match. Some teams can't hear the coach anyway because of the sound and the audience. But actually, you're right on the other side of the pitch. You can't hear me anyway. And actually, I'm out of date because I'm telling you something that's happened in the past, not something that can happen in the future. So can I develop your confidence in that? And that's where your peers can help. So we put a lot of energy and time into getting them to understand and build that robustness. So let me just add something to this, Matt, because this is something a lot struggle on. At the rule of 2 in communication with that 3 A's, a lot of athletes, and this is the invisible expectations and the grey, haven't, and the coach hasn't agreed of how you communicate. So we can put UAEs against communication at rule of 2, peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
So what we say is it has to be solution-based. So we can put unacceptable would be, I'm reaching out and saying something that's just telling them a problem, telling them what they're doing wrong. That would be unacceptable because it's not helpful.
Right.
You just miss that. Oh, you need it. It's like, no, that's giving me nothing of value. So that would be unacceptable. Acceptable would be, I'm sharing an effective solution for you, but my tone, because I'm stressed or, I'm just in the game, I not be smart enough yet to be able to go, right, that's Sarah or Jimmy. I'm going to adjust my communication style because I know that's the most impact for you. I haven't got time for that right now. I'm not skilled enough yet. But if I'm sharing a solution to you, that's acceptable. Exceptional would be, I'm sharing a solution and I'm adjusting my style of communication because I know that's going to be more effective when you hear it. That's exceptional. Now, the reason why I frame that is because a lot of people expect exceptional for everyone, and that's not going to happen. So what you'll get is you'll get an athlete sharing a solution, and the athlete hearing it is going, I don't like how you're saying that.
Right. Yeah.
And so they're going, I'm not listening to that. Well, hey guys, we have that, and then you're dealing with an issue. Whereas we pre-agree, no, that's tough to do. We want to get there, but actually acceptable would be if they're sharing a solution. So then when that comes up and you're scanning for it, someone share a solution, someone go, oh, you're being a bit aggressive, whatever it is. You can then do a hot one-to-one with that person and go, hey, what did they say to you? Okay, so was it solution-based? Oh, yes, coach, but, well, remind me what we agreed on at UAEs.
Yeah.
Is that acceptable or unacceptable? Acceptable. So what do you need to do? And they share, show me.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I love to talk about solution-based because a lot of times, Mark, I mean, we love, even us as coaches, we love pointing out the problems, right? But we don't actually come back with the solutions. And again, if we're trying to make our athletes better at decision making, right, and cultivating the ownership of what they see on the field. And a lot of times, like what you're talking about, a lot of times we have this expectations. We try to tell our coaches, meet your athletes where they're at, not where we expect them to be, right? And establishing that, and the whole thing about communication. A lot of times we assume communication is taking place, but I know there's a great quote. George Bernard Shaw says, like the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that has taken place. So I think the big thing, Mark, is being better at communicating, being more solution-based, like you're saying. Stop just pointing out the problems.
And that we are sometimes the problem there as well, because often when we scan, we are scanning as coaches often for problems. Yeah. So when things don't go well, we have like a fix-it mentality. So often when we have chats with the athletes, often it's far too long anyway, and it's all us and not them. We might ask a few questions. We'll get the same players saying our answers, then we'll take over. We need to add something. But the problem with that is we are developing the behaviors that they're going to subconsciously take on. And what we often don't do, so let me give you an example, Matt, is when we see something exceptionally well, we go, oh, that was great. And we'll chuck it. Yeah, brilliant, great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we'll come in and we'll talk about something we need to get better at, something that was unacceptable. What we need to do is when we come in, if we saw an exceptional, remember exceptionals are things that we don't always do yet, because if we could do it all the time, it would be unacceptable for us.
Right.
We need to come in and go, talk to me what happened over there, Stevie. Review that, please. And often Stevie will be thinking, I must have done something wrong, because coach will only ask me a question if I've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And they'll
If
make
it's done
something
wrong, yeah.
up. They're like, what? I thought I was all right.
Yeah.
So no. Talk to me. What happened there? What did you see? And they go, oh, I saw someone on my left. I saw there's a gap open on the front there. And I saw my John was on the wing. And so I saw the option that we would normally do. But I thought, actually, I'm going to kick it into that space because I could see John anticipating that. And I committed to that, and he got right into the space, and then we scored into the corner. So now that athlete's quantifying, he goes, great, I love that. So how can we replicate that? So did we all see that? So this is a question we need to always ask ourselves and them is, what did you do so well there that was different than last time? Because that's what we want to repeat. Let's delve into that. So now we're going to think, oh, but I'm not telling them. I'm asking them to review, and there's an action review process I can share. It's probably a bit long for this one outtake. There is a way where you can develop them to think live better, but also quantify themselves when they speak to other athletes and coaches. The other element to that is when they're coming in, we need to make sure we're asking them, okay, so talk to me what happened over there. Okay, so what were your options? To get them to understand, yes, we did this, but actually with the capability of the team or the opposition or where the space was, the situation, the environment, we should have done this.
Right.
So now they're looking ahead of what they can do. And now two questions there come in. One is, this is internally, I'm thinking in my head as a coach, are you guys capable of doing that? Because often you'll have athletes saying something and you're thinking, that sounds fantastic, and I'm sure a top league team could do it, but we've never done it under pressure.
Right. Yeah.
So in my head is going, are we capable of doing that? Or are we going to shift into, we can't do it yet, but we want to spend energy and time developing that. So eventually, if we do it often enough in certain situations, we will be able to pull it off under pressure. Is that something we want to invest in? But if we can't do it yet, we need to ask ourselves, is that something we can do now? And they say, okay, no, that's high risk for us now. Not sure she's fast enough to get on the end of it. She couldn't receive that level of speed of pass. Okay, but what can we do now? Let's look at the options we can commit to now. If we're in performance environment, if we need to be successful. So now we're delving into that. The second point that is a catch out warning. Often we'll have athletes coming in. They haven't done what they should have done. They'll come in. We go, right, review that, and we'll get the athletes telling us exactly what they did wrong, exactly what they should have done right. Now the coach thinking, brilliant. They know the coach should not be saying brilliant. The coach should respond with, interesting, love what you said there. When did you recognize that? And they go, oh, straight away, coach says, okay, what prevented you from committing to it? Because I don't want you to tell me the answer. I want you to show me. So don't be fearful of it doesn't come off. If you're recognizing what you're doing isn't working, isn't successful, and you're seeing another option, commit to that. Then we can come and have a conversation. What I don't want you to do is think, oh, I don't want to commit to it because coach thinks I shouldn't. He hasn't told me to, or I'm not sure it's going to come off. I know we've done it in the past. That's not helpful for us. So don't tell me, show me. So if you're recognizing in the moment there is a better solution, commit to that better solution. I don't care at this stage if it doesn't come off. I'm excited about you committing to that choice as a collective or an individual. So now we're given that permission of clarity, which we need to back up, by the way. So then if they start doing that, we can't go, no, you need to go here. And then they're going, well, I'll just do what you tell me to do again, coach, because you're having a go at me because it didn't come off because the coach is still outcome based. So we need to align to what we're saying, we're asking of our athletes.
Yeah. And here's the big thing, Mark, as I hear you talking about it, I'm just picturing what that environment looks like. And I think the biggest thing we have to realize as coaches is when we put them in that environment, it is going to be ugly, right? Practice isn't going to look pretty. There's going to be mistakes. But again, what we're trying to do is cultivate this ownership where our athletes can make decisions in the moment. Because think about it, games, Mark, they're so unpredictable. There's chaos. There's so many things that happen that we can't really create in the practice environment. So we have to understand that practice has to look ugly because that's what learning is. Learning is a ugly process in order for it to stick.
And often you're playing an opposition at any level, any age, that is tougher than your practice opposition.
Yeah,
So what you're doing in practice, the chances are you will not be able to replicate that level of success against true opposition. So
right.
we need to really, from the earliest age we can, shift the expectation of players, athletes at all age. The earlier we can, the better. But we got to honor as coaches is say, look, what we need to do in practice is stretch ourselves. But
Yeah,
we've got to know where we are in practice. So I use these 3 different session types and we share with the athletes, but then the coaches honor them as well. So the first phase is what I call learn it.
yeah,
So you would say, right, there's something we can't do yet, but we want to introduce a new tactical play, movement, whatever it is. And it could do this with an individual athlete as well. So we're in learn it phase. So what we're saying is that we have no interest in the outcome at all. We're interested in committing to something we can't yet do.
yeah,
But let's be enthusiastic about identifying when the right time to commit to it and commit to it.
yeah,
So we're reviewing then our choice and our commitment all the time, which we should do as we develop anyway, but we eliminate and we go, we can't do this yet. So do not get frustrated if we
right.
cannot do it because we wouldn't be in learning. So what we do also, we put with them is, and you can still set UAEs, there'll definitely be a lot more coach interaction at this stage.
Yeah,
Once we're starting to be successful, then we can say, are you ready to go in what the next phase, which is I call perform it phase?
yeah. Okay.
And they go, okay, great. So now what we're doing is we would look like normal gameplay. It might be full pitch court, it may be half. But what we're looking for is then now I'm putting you in that situation with those oppositions. I'm looking for, can we now, what we've now cultivated and learn it phase, can that be maintained in that performance phase? So instead of going back to what you normally do, we're being excited. When the opportunity arises, we're committing to this.
Yeah,
Understanding it might come down a little bit in capability, but that's fine because that's where we are. And we stay in there and all of a sudden that becomes more natural. The last phase is what even at elite level teams I work with do not do often enough, is what I call challenge it phase.
yeah,
So now we're saying is right now when we play a normal game in practice at full speed, half pitch, full, whatever it may be, we are being successful at our level of what we term success for us in how percentage of success in this coming off. Consistently, it's embedded in what we do now. The challenge it phase is the coach is now switching their head
yeah,
or the cap. So what they're saying is now is my job now is to see if I can break this down. I'm going to see if I can find the chinks.
right.
So now I'm not interested in it being successful. I'm looking for, if I'm going to imagine I'm the opposition, how can I find where the breakdown is? How robust is this now? So you may brief oppositions, do certain things, certainly certain Empire ref calls. You'll do unfair matchups in certain
Yeah,
situations. And what we're doing is we're seeing now when I'm putting these situations in, can you read it right? Are you robust enough to continue to make the right choice commit? Can you adapt? And I'm just looking, can I find the chinks? Now, you should find chinks if you're doing this properly. And
yeah,
that's fine. 2 things will happen. We go, well, they're now picking up where the problem is and adapting. Brilliant. But they're still not getting the success. It's expected because we're not expected to. Also, you may find a consistency and a source of where a breakdown is. So you're starting to see a trend. I can see that's the source of the breakdown. So then you may stop them and go, okay, review guys. And now they're recognizing, okay, the source of the issue is here. And
yeah,
use that language. Where's the source of the breakdown? When we're being successful, what are we doing? When we're not, can you spot it? If they can't, you share, okay, this is what I'm seeing. If they can, great. So let's put some energy in there. You might go back into learn it or perform it and go, let's build on this. There's no time to it. It's non-linear. So you might be 5 minutes in it. You let me know when you're ready, guys. Coach, we're
yeah,
ready. Right, let's go again. And we load the pressure again. So one, it's massively engaging. Secondly, it's getting them to understand match IQ is saying, actually, where's the source? We're not keep talking about outcome. Okay, let's put energy there. We're ready. Let's go again. And that sliding scale of pressure loading is now starting to unite in that rule of 3 as well, that interaction. But also what we're doing is we're making sure sessions are meaningful in expectation
yeah,
actually in the session, because those 3 different phases have totally different expectations. And actually the role of the coach is very different in all 3.
yeah. And I love it, Mark. And as I hear you talk, like what I'm thinking about is how transferable all these skills are for everyday life, right? And for me,
Yep.
working with high school kids, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help our kids be successful in all facets of life.
Yep.
So all the stuff that we're teaching within your system is setting them up far beyond sports, far beyond scoreboard, far beyond outcomes. And we're teaching them the behaviors. We're giving them the courage to make the decisions based on a solution that they think is going to work. And that's what it's all about for me, Mark, is setting our kids up to be successful in all facets of life. So I know we do have 499 more hours to go, Mark, but we did blow through an hour real quick. Is there anything you want to share to kind of wrap up our conversation? And then can you share your website where we can find your resources and how we can keep this conversation moving forward?
Yeah, so I'd say if we could when wrap this element up, there's some key points for me. Is one is understanding the one constant in sport is the people, not the player. The
Yes.
people, not the coach. So
Yep.
if we can enhance the person and their robustness, that they're making informed choices based on what they see aligned to the success, which may be not pressing snooze when they get out of bed, because success for them is they want to get up early or in time so they can have a decent shower, do their flexibility, get a decent breakfast, not another 5 minutes in bed.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between need and want. I want 5 minutes in bed, but what I need to do is get out of bed. So I'm getting out. And then your positive reinforcement. I've made a great choice. I've committed to a great choice.
Yeah.
What you talk about there, we've talked about students, but also it enhances the coaches, the adults. And
Mhm.
the amount of coaches that come back to me and says, Mark, my parenting is so much better now because I've
Yeah.
eliminated the grey. And I'm not getting in a conversation with my child when I'm already annoyed. I'm making sure on my state successful. What is
Yeah.
success for this conversation? Pre-agreeing UAE's even on tidying their bedroom, whatever it is. So it definitely, and I've used this in global business as well. I'd say listening back to this, if you've seen it as value, listen back and reference yourself and be honest with yourself. Is what are you doing now every time that we've discussed? What are you doing sometimes or kind of? And the sometimes or kind of or never, pick one and just say, what could I commit to that's going to enhance me just from this conversation? And I think that will help. The last bit I'd say as advice is, if you haven't already, film yourself coaching. Obviously, get the sign off from the children, the parents,
Yeah.
but film yourself and watch it back of your interactions, not what the athletes are doing, your interactions of how you're interacting, how long you're saying. Are you speaking to the same 20% and never speaking to the 8%? Are you engaging them
Right.
all? Are
Yeah.
you being non-linear in how you're developing? So they would be my take homes for the listeners. If you're interested in finding out more, everything, website, all the social medias is PDS Coach. So website is pdscoach.com. That's Papa Delta Sierra Coach. But on there is, I've done an online resource. There's a few quite cheap, shorter ones, which can go in just into rule of three or in just session formats and how you can build that. But also the members area is about 150 hours,
Yeah.
Matt, of literally taking you
Yeah.
on a journey of where do you start, the common issues, how you cultivate it, which you can take it all the way to elite sport level or just start it at grassroots. So yeah, they're the go-tos if you want to explore more.
Awesome, Mark. Well, I'll tell you right now, I did not hit snooze on my alarm clock this morning because I knew I was going to get up and talk to you, man. I knew the value you're going to add. I'm completely honored and privileged to have you on the Being Champions podcast.
I always do a question at the end, Matt, so no
Yes.
pressure. But what's been your main takeaway from this conversation that you didn't have before coming in? Anything else giving you some texture or some context that you didn't have before?
I think the biggest thing, Mark, is when you brought that second word, when I brought up intentionality, I think when you said attention to and understanding that it's not just being intentional about all this thing, it's actually paying attention, right? And for me,
Yeah,
being a coach, taking a step back and being better at scanning and paying attention to what's going on.
yeah, awesome. 100%. And that scanning behaviors first. Always coach
Yeah.
thinks behaviors. So even when they're starting to walk in, I'm scanning now. I'm not
Yeah.
putting cones out, I'm scanning behaviors, because all your issues will stem from software, not hardware. Success will stem from software, not hardware. So let's get good at that. Let's invest in that. Let's cultivate that. The hardware is the easy bit.
Yeah. Well, I love it, Mark, and I'm so happy to have you in my life now, man, and to continue to learn from you. And we'll definitely stay in contact.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Hey, listen, I hope you all enjoyed that conversation with Mark. I'm sitting here with a notebook full of notes and just completely blown away by the information and the concepts and the idea Mark's talked about today. And I think my biggest takeaway, again, going back to this idea of creating and establishing a system, right? I shared that quote with James Clear about we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to our levels of our systems. And like Mark was saying, it's not just having the intentionality, it's about paying attention and taking a step back and really scanning for the behaviors we want to see within our systems, right? Again, Mark talks about performance is a behavior, not an outcome. And I think that's what we have to take a hard look at as coaches. Are we developing a system that's shaping the right behaviors where our athletes can make better decisions, commit to choices without having fear? They're able to hold each other accountable using Mark's rule of three and being able to accept, acknowledge, and act on feedback and just keep everyone moving forward on this common vision, or as Mark says, going after our common lighthouse. So again, just sitting here completely blown away. I absolutely love this conversation with Mark. I hope you all had some great takeaways. If you want, hit up Mark, get some more information. Hit me up if you want to reach out to him. But again, I just appreciate everyone for tuning into the Being Champions podcast, and I hope you all join us next week. Thanks.